And we're live.
Meeting will now come to order. A roll call. Ms. Burnett.
Here.
Mr. Cowley.
Here.
Mr. Glanick.
Here.
Mrs. Olson.
Here.
Mr. Landier.
Present.
Mr. Hirsch.
Here.
Here. Okay, we rise to the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now a word from our administrator.
Yeah, I would just like to reiterate, last Friday I sent a video out to our community members, but I want to just send a shout out one more time to all of our veterans that have served their country, that are serving their country now. Thank you for your service to the country. Your sacrifices help give us the freedoms that we get to enjoy every single day, and our veterans are at the top of my list in life and that. So thank you very much for everything you did. So
Thank you. Okay, the agenda was posted throughout the district according to school board policy, published as a legal ad in the Superior Telegram, posted on the district webpage, and sent to the WNXR radio station for announcement. A meeting notice was sent to the Connection for publication. Approval of the November 13th, that's tonight's 2023 agenda, open and executive session. Go ahead and entertain a motion.
Make motion, Jerry.
Motion by Ms. Olson and second by Mr. Cowley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, item 4 is the consent agenda. And that includes the October 9th regular board meeting minutes and the October 23rd, 2023 special meeting, open and executive sessions. And then we have the treasurer's report, Mr. Landier.
A summary of the treasurer's report as of October 31st, 2023, general fund. General account on October 31st, 2023, there was a balance of $2,139,466.91 in cash and investments. Receipts since the 1st of November and not included in the October 31 balance of $72,586.75. And the disbursement from tonight's November 13th board meeting total $124,072.03. The flexible spending account on October 31st, 2023, there was a balance of $23,381.17 in cash and investments. The health reimbursement account on October 31, 2023, there was a balance of $9,220.89 in cash and investments. And in the debt service fund on October 31st, 2023, there was a balance of $673.73 in cash and investments, and a more detailed report on fund activity is included for your review in the financial statements.
Thank you. Then the payment of invoices, I trust that each board member has a chance to talk to Mr. Fetchikotter if you have any questions. And then D is resignation / employment, Mr. Moore.
yeah, we had Katie Manches, part-time special ed educator at Northwestern Elementary, is resigning. We also have a resignation from Mrs. Cheryl Kyle, our Northwestern High School admin assistant in the main office. This position is posted in-house into the public. And we have some employment recommendations. Ashley McGuire, part-time special education paraeducator at Northwestern Elementary. And Todd Holmes is a new one, a part-time custodian at Iron River Elementary. Just a FYI, Ashley Samar was moved from the 5.75 hours per day to 7 hours per day to accommodate the high needs special education students at NES. The additional time vacancy was posted in-house interviews for help, and it was determined that Ashley was best suited for the position. All these recommendations and resignations are, we're looking to approve those.
Okay, thank you. So for the consent agenda, we need a motion.
Make motion.
A motion by Mr. Burnett, and we need a second.
Second.
Second, Mr. Glanick, one. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. Item 5, the act in Wisconsin Forward, or ACT, an acronym. Can I call it the act? No,
Call it anything you
ACT.
want.
ACT and Wisconsin Forward exam results, Mr. Larrabee and the district assessment.
I did share a slideshow, and I believe that Mrs. Janigo had shared it out, but I am going to present because anybody that's watching at home can then access it. So if you want to move slightly to be able to see, that is up to you. I did want to start by just a little bit of background. So the ACT and the Wisconsin Forward results have been released publicly. So that's the reason I'm presenting on those today. There is a public website for board members, community members, that is called Wise-Public, that you can go in and you can look at this data. It's all something that is public. You can't drill down to individual kids, but you can look at buildings. You can also look at historical trends. So if you want to dig into Wise-Public, feel free. If anybody, public or board, wants more information, feel free to email me or set up a time, and I can certainly walk people through how to get to it and kind of dig in and look a little more at the trend data for our areas. So what I am going to give you today is kind of a 1,000-foot view. We're going to look at some building data as far as each elementary school, middle school, and high school. And I also put both of our elementary schools together so we can look at just elementary level. So I have some data that shows how we're doing as far as buildings and levels go. And then I also compiled some Heart of the North comparisons. In the past, I've been asked to look at, well, how do we do compared to our neighboring districts? My asterisk on that is we always have to take with a grain of salt that, you have differences amongst schools. So in the Heart of the North, we have schools that have a very different demographic than what we have. So anytime you see numbers, you have to take into account that there are some differences amongst our districts and schools. So there's always more to the story than just the graphs and the colors. So without further ado, we will start by looking at the elementary levels. So both Iron River and NES have continued to really perform well. One thing that I'd like to bring to light again is we did launch a new ELA resource this year. So our curriculum, we spent the last 2 years looking at how we can do better. And that led us to a discussion with the elementary staff about looking into how we're teaching reading. I was here, I think last month, talking about Act 20 and how that will impact our kids. So I'm glad to say that we are continuing to grow. But now that we have a new resource in place this year, our teachers are continuing to grow, and we're seeing a positive impact this year. And we look forward to really seeing what the next 4 or 5 years entail as well. If you're not familiar, the Wisconsin Forward exam is for every student in grades 3 through 8 for English language arts, 4 and 8 kids test in science, and then also in 4, 8, and 10 they test in social studies. So with that, like grade 10 as an example, they do not take the English language arts, they just take the social studies portion. Grades 3 and 5, they only take the English language arts and the math part. So there's some differences by grade levels with that. When we look at both elementary schools, these graphs are directly from the Wise-Public portal. I hovered over so we can see numbers. It shows us kind of where our kids fall. So if we think at the elementary level, both buildings, we had 266 kids that took the assessment for English language arts. And you can see the breakdown by percentages, below basic, proficient, advanced. Because next month, the state report cards will come out. I'll come back, I'm assuming in December, to talk about how our schools did on the state report cards, and again, in comparison to other districts. Where those percentages and those kids that perform at those comes into account is when we look at the matrix, if you will, for report cards. Here in Maple, because of our demographic, we have a lot of weight on our achievement. So the higher that kids perform, the more points you get. So it's important to note that we want to push kids on the top as much as support kids on the bottom, because we need to make sure that all of our kids are achieving to the greatest of their potential. And growth is measured across a 3-year period. So we get percentage points for that as well. So that's kind of where the elementary is at. I'm a trend data person. It's great to do well and have a lot of kids that are blue, if you will, or high achieving, but we want to look at how we're swinging that pendulum. So if you look at this particular graph, it has 18-19 is pre-COVID. 19-20 was our year where we went home and didn't come back. 2021 would have been the year that the schools were on rotating schedules for the secondary level. Elementary was 5 days a week, and then 21, 22, obviously into this year. So you can see we have continued to perform similar to where we were pre-COVID, and this year we actually were performing higher than we were prior to the COVID pandemic in ELA. And again, this is both elementary schools combined. We break that apart a little bit. The graph on the right is our state performance. So if you think all the kids in the state of Wisconsin, and then the left is how did the kids at Northwestern Elementary School do. So you can see the 266 kids in the whole district took the assessment. At the elementary level, 225 of them were at NES. You can kind of see the breakdown of where those kids are, and again, compared to the state average. So interesting point for me, if you look at the kids below basic, those lower performers, our percentage was at 18.7%, whereas the state average was 24%. So important to note that we have less low performing kids. And on the top, obviously, we're trying to move to have more of the blue, and I think it's a darker blue, performing kids on the top end. Iron River, if we look at them, obviously smaller cell size, we had 41 kids their test, and we had 2 out of the 41, or about 5% at the top end, but we had a very small percentage being basic at the bottom at 20%. So you can kind of see the 10%, 9.8. So you can see the breakdown compared to the state again. So again, Iron River continues to do well, as well as NES. For comparison data, I put both elementary schools back together. That's our Maple. So if we look by grade level, you can see for ELA how we compare to other schools in the heart of the North. This took a little bit of legwork because they don't have some of the usability features in WiseDash Public that they used to have. So I had to actually go into every school, if you will, and pull that out. So asterisks for our community that's watching, if there's any data errors, because I was doing this by pencil. There is an asterisk in grade 5. Those are schools that I'd like to note that those schools actually have 5th grade at the middle school level. So when I pull in WiseDash, say Barron, because they're the one right below us, Barron's 5th grade is at their middle school. So the all students percentage is actually based off of the kids that are at the elementary level. So it's not including those 5th grade kids for that percentage on the WiseDash portal. So if you look at how all of the kids do, similar to last year, the NES and Iron River Elementary School kids in ELA performed at the 3rd if we compare to everybody else, which is on par with where we were last year. I am excited because, as I said, we have invested into a new resource. So I'm hoping that as we continue to focus on teaching those early literacy skills, we'll see that uptick. As I know that St. Clair Falls and Cumberland have done that work already. So we're chasing some of their success by doing the same things. Any questions on elementary, otherwise I'll go on to middle school. I know, bedazzled you all with numbers, so. Not everybody gets as excited as I do. Mathematics. So we have, at the elementary level, we've had great success in mathematics, going back to predates my time here. We've continued to see the same thing. We have a much larger percentage of kids that are high performing in mathematics, and we also keep that bottom up. So that's an indication our teachers and also our resource are working because we see less kids that struggle on the bottom and we have high performance. Similar to the other, we are seeing that trend moving up. We're still not back to pre-COVID performance, but I think that we're going to get there. I think our teachers are spending more time with our kids, and that's going to help us. By building, you can see NES as well. We have a very low representation on the bottom, those below basic kids, and we have above the state average performance for our high achievers. And we see the same thing at Iron River. So again, I'm confident that our kids are going to keep moving and growing. And when we compare to the heart of the North, we're still in that 3rd place. You can see a couple districts are ahead of us, but not by much. And moving on to the middle level. So this is Craig, feel free to chime in if you want on anything. So similar to the elementary, we see that our kids are representing very well. If we look at the middle school ELA for all 3 grade levels together, they had 258 kids. So every kid at the middle school takes the 4 exam. They did very well on ELA. They again have a smaller than the state average for below basic, showing that we're meeting the bottom kids. And we also have a good representation on the top end, close to the state average. Like the elementary school, we see that trend data, not quite back to pre-COVID markers, but we're certainly getting closer and moving in the right direction. And everybody wants to see the comparisons. So you can see, similar to the elementary school, I think they come in third or fourth as far as when we look at all students at the middle school compared to other schools in the heart of the north. And again, I put those asterisks in for all students because now if Barron, as an example, had fifth grade at the middle school, they have 4 grade levels represented in that total versus here in Maple we have 3. So just a little data disclaimer that their population would be larger than ours. Looking at mathematics, I actually called Mrs. Craig the day that I got this and said, you will be quite impressed. Our mathematics continues to perform high. If you look at that representation of the kids that are below basic, we see a similar trend in the elementary that we have good supports for our low performing students. You see a small percentage there and also a higher percentage for our blue kids, our proficient and advanced. And again, that positive trend line moving back towards, we're not quite to pre-COVID markers yet, but we're certainly getting closer. And when we look at the heart of the north comparison, the middle school is the highest performing school for mathematics. So, yeah.
I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah.
Basic, or maybe I should start this.
Oh,
Proficient.
Yep.
Is proficient means you know what you're doing?
That's the best way to
And-
describe it. Yep.
And basic means you got a pretty decent understanding,
Yeah.
but you're not quite there or
So
what?
when we talk about standardized testing, so what they're looking for, your kids that are basic and below basic are going to be kids that aren't quite making what's expected. So I try to compare to letter grades, but
Yeah.
the kids that are below a C, if you will. Then your kids that are B and A, if you will, or they're understanding they're meeting the benchmark, they're going to be your proficient and advanced kids. There is a way that I can actually filter it within the public site to say who's meeting benchmark is what they call it, which is the expectation of the state for a particular set of standards. So if you give a math test, kids that meet the benchmark, it's this percentage. Kids that don't, it's this percentage. Where those categories come in, again, going back to the report card, when they look at the matrix, and it's University of Wisconsin-Madison that does the work for us, they take those values, if you will. If you're advanced, you get 1.5 points for that score. If you're proficient, you get a point. If you're basic, you get 0.5 point. And if you're below basic, you get 0. So when all of that math gets compiled together to give you a report card, the more kids you have at the top, obviously, the better you do on your achievement. And if you move kids from the 3-year average, if you moved a bunch of kids from proficient to advanced, you're going to get a lot more growth score there. And those two, for growth and for achievement, they add up to be 50% of your score, with the exception of high school. It's a whole other beast.
Okay.
Make sense?
It does. It's just I look at some of these and I see, because it took me a minute to actually think about what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
But some of these you have a greater than, like Northwestern Middle School ELA, you've got 57%.
You're on a data table, this one?
No,
Oh. I got it right there.
so you take below basic and basic, you've
Yep.
got 57%. That's
Correct.
I guess underachieving. Is that those are the words that you just used? Is that?
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to
No,
say that, but I mean
It's a good question.
that
Well, and that's the.
and I don't like charts and metrics and data and all that crap. I just like to know
Well,
how are the kids doing.
It-
But
what I was saying, when I talk with parents, whether it be, individual or group meetings, if we were to line up 100 kids, where would the kids stack up? We're gonna line them up, and 57% are gonna be, ahead of the other, 47% or 43%. How do kids stack up with each other? And it's nice to be able to see, like, they give us the state data, and then when we do public releases, we can compare with neighboring districts that are of similar demographic. It's nice to just see how do we stack up with others. I put more stock in our trend data. Are we moving in the right direction? If we think of before we had COVID and then the impact that we had with half days and days on, days off, being at home, online learning, all those different things, are we moving in a direction back to where we were before that? And at both elementary and middle school, we are. That's important.
No, I'm very, very appreciative that you did pre-COVID on there, because I would ask that question anyway. So it's nice to see that trend. I mean, anybody who didn't think that it was gonna go backward during that time period,
Absolutely.
but it is going in the right direction. And I mean, you have to put some weight to the test, but not everybody tests well.
Oh, absolutely. And
It's just that I see like that, and I'm not picking on anybody in any particular fashion, because their kids are getting, my opinion, a good education. It's just, like I said, 57% of that particular, I mean, you can pick all of them, but that's not what I'm.
well, and the art of this is the 1,000-foot view. What we've done, and I'll speak to the elementary level, is we've pulled those individual reports. So I've sat down with individual students and said, hey, I'm proud of you for this. Or the next meeting is, hey, I know you can do better than this. What can I do to help you? So we've worked with, drilling down to the individual skills, and that's part of like our reading services, our classroom at the elementary. We have RTI periods where we can work specific to skills to then later be able to come back and show, hey, we're moving in the right direction, we're growing. So it's 1,000-foot all the way down to the individual kid. And that's that RTI manual you guys approved in July-ish, I think. That's how that all comes to life with kids. The kid in the seat, this isn't a big deal to them. This is for us as the adults.
Yeah.
But where that comes to the point at the very bottom is how are we meeting the individual kids' reading needs? Because in third grade, they showed that they needed more. Now they're a fourth grader. What are we doing for that? Is that, the classroom teacher working with them? Is that a reading support that's working with them? Is it, looking into special education services or growing those special ed services? So it's a big continuum of support in order to get them to, did they grow? Are they growing at a comparison? If that kid was going to Maple versus going to, St. Clair Falls, would they have got a different education there? And those are the things that I look at. How to make it better.
Thank you.
Mark, we're gonna go on. Yeah.
I'm sorry, could I ask one more question?
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is gonna come out right, and I probably should know this because we've talked about it before, maybe Tanya would be the better one to answer this. Yeah, the math scores are amazing, and I know, I'm not sure if it was a year, 2 years ago, the math classes were doing, having, maybe the higher level math students in a class by itself. And then I think it was a high school that said that wasn't necessarily working. So then I think that they go to like in class, pulling those kids, or I guess I'm just seeing how, like the scores that we're seeing are amazing. And if we're doing something different from what, am I explaining myself?
Yeah,
Remember what I'm
yeah.
talking about? Okay.
Yes, no, you're doing great.
Okay.
Yeah, first and foremost, I mean, the scores are indicative of what distinguished educators, the power of distinguished educators in classrooms. Whether we look at our ELA teachers or our math teachers, I mean, they're doing a phenomenal job. There are very few school districts that in a year or two are catching kids up to proficiency. So tonight, just taking a moment to remember that and honor our teachers who have stayed the course. They've been on that battlefield and they're winning right now. And the efforts of our students, I mean, as much as they've been through, and we just continue to perform at such extraordinary levels. So our Tiger teachers, our Tiger students, and our community and our families, like, kudos. This is amazing to see this. In terms of the math, cycling back to that, what was going on is we were offering students that wanted to, and families, to try and accelerate it. We shouldn't call it accelerated. If they wanted to try a little bit of a challenge, we were offering that. So students from 6th grade, if they were demonstrating that they were ready to take that next step, they had the option to do that. Some of the students in this room are nodding right now because they've been part of that process. And I think they'd have some great things to say about that. So they were able to take, yep, there's some more in here.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here tonight, gentlemen and ladies. Yeah. So, yes, so they have the opportunity in sixth grade, if they're demonstrating that, there's some criteria, then they can, in seventh grade, condense the seventh grade content into a semester, and then start the eighth grade the second semester. So essentially they're doing pre-algebra, so that in eighth grade, they have the opportunity, if they choose, to then move into eighth grade and do algebra, where they're also condensing and accelerating too. So it's an opportunity for those students who want the challenge. And I think it's absolutely fantastic that, you know, in our rural community, that students with mathematical abilities, not just the skill set, but the drive and the motivation, have the opportunity to do that. So that's what they've been doing. And I think the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, I was
on the
gonna
wall
say,
there.
so this is probably a reflection
Yeah.
of that process.
Yeah, they're really doing great. So we're really proud of them. And a shout out to our math teachers, Jeff Wilson, Craig Anderson, David Owen, and Jamie Teal. You know, the work of John Hattie, if you're familiar with that, the research, and our special education teachers as well are phenomenal. Brittany Woodward, Ben Nutting, Nick Olson right now, just doing a bang up job. But the work of John Hattie says the longer a teacher is in the same grade level, teaching the same content, that's your number one predictor of a student outcome in a classroom. So when I name the names of those teachers, they're just amazing. So I'm taking a moment tonight to salute them.
And thank you for that.
Mhm.
I really appreciate that they're going that extra effort too. Is that going to continue?
Yeah, yes. Right now that we have no inkling to change that. But that's where we're at right now. So my senior knows no, we're still offering that. We've actually last year decided to change some of the criteria because we were getting so much feedback that students wanted to try it. And so we looked at the criteria for that, and first and foremost is the desire and the want, and then looking at their data as well, and whether or not they can do that. Being very open with our families that, you know, it also needs that family engagement too, because your students are going to need that support after 3:30. So, again, seeing all of our seniors nodding, my peripheral vision there, yes. So yeah, pretty awesome.
Was the senior group the first group that did that?
They were not. It was last year's group
Okay.
of students, the class of 2023. Yeah. I think by the time we got to the seniors, we had it figured out. So you guys are.
Anything else? Elementary? All right, moving on. So the high school, again, it's very different assessment, the ACT, which is taken by our junior class. It's a very different beast because they don't take it, it's not the same group of kids each year. So when you look at historical data, keep in mind it's a different group of kids. So I don't know if you want to add anything on that. Oh, thank you, I appreciate that. We talked about the kids that took the assessment last year. Similar fashion to the elementary, I try to keep it as consistent as can be. You can see there was 99 kids that took the ACT. They would be seniors this year.
And I'm sorry, can I interrupt?
Yeah.
This is the ACT course that's offered in the school.
So this is the ACT assessment.
The assessment
Yep.
that's
And it's taken.
as a junior.
Yes. Correct, and which would be our seniors that are here today, your results.
Yeah.
Part of this, I'm not gonna highlight it, part of this. So you can see kind of the breakdown and then again, the comparison to the state. You can see, you know, by percentages, we're fairly comparable to the state. We have less kids that are below basic. We're pretty comparable on the advanced, and then it's really just a mix of the proficient and basic, how we traded back and forth on the ELA. So there's different sections, and as I go further in, you'll see more results because the ACT gives different reports for ELA, for reading, mathematics, also composite. Those are the ones that I focused on for this. If we look at the ELA historical growth, this is kind of how they historically have traded. You can see similar to fashion pre-COVID. Or in 1920, the ACT is administered at a different time than the Wisconsin board exam. So they had taken the ACT prior to going home for spring break. So we were able to have ACT results that year, as opposed to the forward exam. We do that after spring break. We had planned for it, we practiced, we just didn't get to do it. So that is why they have that data point. In mathematics, similar fashion, you can see there's a significantly different amount when it comes to proficient. Those cut scores are determined by the state, they're not, and by ACT, not by us. But it is comparable across the whole state. So you can see there's a large representation that's below basic. In mathematics, there's a large percentage that's basic. And then we have a narrow band, just like the state for narrower band for proficiency and for advanced. You can see the historical data for mathematics, which is, as Mrs. Olson had alluded to, some conversations at the high school level about how to teach math and what we're doing and what we're offering for high school students right now. And then this is more specific to the actual assessment. So the state performances are on the bottom, and then our performances are on the top graph. You can see there's a different rating for ELA, English, reading, writing, over in mathematics, science, and then total composite. So when most people think of the ACT, they think of, well, when I took it years ago, I got X score. That's usually the composite that people reference. You can see our composite to the state composite is very comparable. Do you want to add anything?
I just have a question.
Yeah.
At one point, I don't know how many years ago, all the students didn't take the AC test. They're using the statistics. And then at that, they said, well, everybody takes the AC.
Yeah.
That-
I don't know how
Long
many
time
years
ago.
ago that was.
In high school,
But yeah, there was a time where ACT was voluntary. But the state made a switch from the state test, which is the old WKCE, which was based on Wisconsin standards. I won't get into their reasoning for changing, but they switched over to the ACT, which is not based on Wisconsin standards. And so it's a whole different way of looking at it. And some of the things that we've done over the last number of years is really kind of stressed more what the ACT is looking for as opposed to what the state standards are looking for. In a variety of different ways. So we've compensated for that and kind of changed how we look at things from that perspective. But yeah, that was a number of years ago.
It predates my
that was
time.
switched over.
I think it was 10 years ago because I was in charge of it.
There you go.
It happened.
You are correct. As far as Heart of the North comparisons, so if we look at, the composite score or those three areas, you can see we're right in there with the top schools in the Heart of the North Conference. So it's, even though we have seen it decline in some areas, so has everybody else. And again, that comes back to how do things look during the COVID pandemic and what are the other needs that have come in afterwards. And in my opinion, our staff are doing everything we can. And we're still hanging in there, we're doing just as well.
Excuse me, it's kind of interesting that you go by composite scores here and in middle school and grade school, it's various schools that are achieving different levels.
Yep. Yeah, which takes us again back to, at the building level, we have these conversations with our team, as Mark had said, and Tanya had shared. We're looking at what are we giving in the classroom and at the individual level in order to try and improve in these areas.
Well, another difference too is that the elementary and middle school scores are based on 5 grades or 3 grades, and it's a composite.
You are correct.
And this is looking at one grade.
One grade.
And so if you have one grade coming through that's lower performing, it's gonna look like you had an awful year.
And some of those other schools might have a smaller class.
So you're gonna see a lot more fluctuation in the high school scores.
And I share that with Iron River as an example, because it's a smaller cell size, so you have higher volatility. If you have a small group come through, but they're high performing, you're gonna see a good score. If you have a small group come through, but they're a lower performing, and it's shared, you see higher changes.
So of all of this data, in general, I'm very encouraged that the trends are going in the right direction. And I don't want to dismiss or undervalue that because I think that's important to note. But I can't dismiss the one trend, to go back 2 slides, I think it is, to the AC, this one here, okay. So I understand what you're saying, Dan, but this is gonna be junior class after junior class after junior class after junior class, right?
Yep.
And I guess I'd appreciate some perspective from those that really know this, with regards to, do we understand this trend?
I'm not real worried about it because everybody's in the same ballpark right now. If you look at the schools, you're coming out of COVID, you're coming back, back in full board, everybody's back in school. Look at the scores that are coming up. It's like having a glass of root beer weekend, all that foam, and you just keep pouring in, and you get the foam up. Everything's going up. These scores in the next few years, they'll go higher. They will. I got no doubt. I mean, I see what the teachers do on a daily basis, popping into their classrooms, and we've got high achieving kids, we've got high achieving teachers that strive for academic greatness. So I think your scores will go up.
Yeah, and Vince, if I was gonna add to that, I mean, if you're looking at math specifically,
I am.
the last 4 or 5 years, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different teachers move through our math department for one reason or another. And so there's a little bit
Interesting
of,
when she just made that comment about the stability.
yeah, and that's a big part of it. As far as, what the kids are doing in the class and trying to bring new people in, to be part of the system that they created within the math department. The other thing that we are looking at, as a department, we are working with CISA this year, taking a look at linking ACT standards to what our curriculum is. One of the things that's very interesting is we don't require geometry as a required course, and yet 40% of what's on the ACT is geometry. And so we are realizing that, we're realizing other things. So those are things we're looking at this year as we're looking at curriculum, look at what the students are doing coming into high school. We just, last Wednesday, for the first time since I've really been there, we've been there, got together 7-12 and take a look at the different curriculums across the board, including that, just to get that conversation going, which we had not had before. So there's a lot of things we're realizing, and it is, class by class, yeah, that trend line is going a certain direction, but during that time, like I said, we've had a lot of turnover in that department, and that plays a big part.
Can I just add one more thing too? When I was teaching through that COVID process, the COVID year, I think I had 80 some kids taking Chem 1. The next year, after they're signing up, I got 46 or something like that. Those kids got gun shy about taking hard classes. And so I think the same thing happened in math. I think the same thing happened in a lot of areas. They didn't feel confident, and they just didn't take the classes that would raise those scores.
Well, and I went back to this slide, because if you look at the Heart of the North comparison for just mathematics in that column, we're not in this alone. And I did not pull the historical data for each of the schools in the Heart of the North, but I certainly could if anybody wanted it. But if we look, I'm willing to bet that they're seeing and experiencing a similar trend, because they had kids that went through a similar stage. And not saying that they can't achieve higher, it was within where they were coming from when they prepared for the ACT last year. That's where they were. And it is a test at one point in time.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when COVID happened, didn't a fair amount of colleges, post-secondary schools essentially say the ACT isn't going to matter, we'll let you in anyways? And they haven't brought that back particularly to the same degree that they did before. And anybody, correct me if I'm wrong there.
For my high school staff.
But if that's the case, and I'm just going off of personal experience, and I'm a junior, and I don't need that, everything's going to be C. I don't care.
I can tell you ACT does matter still.
Any juniors listening?
Well, on one hand, on the other hand, I've got 2 kids in college, and it didn't make one lick of difference.
But I think Adam has like a super good point in terms of what is a variable when we look at the trend data. So when you look at that trend data that's coming down, if you look at where the trend data was high, that was where ACT still was around the time where we typically gave ACT to students who knew they were college bound. Because to go to college, I must take ACT, right?
And you have to do
So-
well.
Right, and you had to do well. So that, but then there was this shift where now we're gonna have everybody take the ACT. But you're right, perspective and how a student approaches an assessment, 100% matters. So if I already know that, I know my pathway, I'm either going community, I'm going career, or I'm going college, those three pathways may look very differently. So my approach to that assessment and that exam may not be an accurate picture of, where I'm at. So you're absolutely right on that. And I think that's with a lot of tests. And then we said, we're gonna have everybody do the ACT. Okay, so everybody's like, all right. And then we had colleges saying, universities, and now it will be test optional as a result of COVID, right? So I'm trying to remove barriers for students, but it sets up another variable for our testing measures.
And that's all I'm trying, that's all. I just wanted, I don't know if they had brought all that back or
Yeah.
slowly brought it back.
What's our
When you-
percentage of special needs kids in each of these years,
Sure.
those junior years? What's our percentage of kids on IEPs? What are our percentage of kids that get accommodations and extended time?
Mhm.
Each junior class, that's a different number.
It's another.
It's another variable to how it's gonna perform.
Or we're still, also another variable is we're still checking for proficiency, the same measures, for those of you who are researchers in the room, the same way they were before COVID. So for a lot of students across the nation, they were out a year or two. And so now, you know what I mean, you're still checking for proficiency the same way you were before that loss of instruction. So the proficiency has to look different. And if we look at how students read today, the amount that they read and how voraciously they read and the amount of input that you can't tell me they're not phenomenal readers, right? So sometimes I question, how are we assessing that or how for them to prove themselves, right? So it's still, I would say, some antiquated measures. That's just my thought. So something to keep in mind as we work with our students who I think continue to just thrive. So,
If we get the test of the cell phone, we do great.
yeah.
And you get to use all the little,
We got
I see
Yeah.
after that CT test,
14
we'll probably
pound,
rock.
whatever they are.
It's not a recommendation, I'm accepting.
Well, if I could just, with all that being said, and as Brad says, and Dan said, it is different looking at the high school for a variety of reasons. Last year, our composite score was the highest in the conference. If you look back, and I have gone back and looked at the last 10 years or so, our composite score has been really solid. There hasn't been a lot of, really highs and really lows. So we've been pretty consistent across the board. And I think, like Honey talked about the middle school teachers, say the same thing about the high school teachers. They want to make sure the kids are getting the best education possible. And I think with Adam, I think they are. What we're doing is looking at how we're doing things and what we're doing things, and we change our curriculum. What we offer, what we require, based on, in part to this, but a lot of different standards. And so I think, to take it all in stride with where we're at, there's gonna be ups and downs, there's gonna be bumps. The important thing is that we continue to be consistent, and even here, if you look at that composite, we're right towards the upper half of the conference. And, if we start dipping, consistently lower than that, then we need to take a look. But I think that we're doing well with everything considered, and
Yeah, I think, and, my closing argument or statement, if you would, what we do with the data is more important than what it is. Because what we take from this, and Mr. Carlson, Craig and I, we sat down, we talked about this, Allison, your day is coming. And we look at, well, what are we doing? So if we have these trends, how are we supporting our teachers? Because the teachers are the ones that are working with the kids. And, it's more so about the actionable steps we can take next. Elementary staff know that with this comes here's how we're going to approach things, and we drill down to the kids with it, so. Anyone?
Thanks very much. I will note that tomorrow the state report card comes out.
Tomorrow, yes.
Tomorrow, so next month we'll have a little
Yep,
more discussion.
and if anybody wants, by all means, give me a call, I can run through individually with you, and then I'll come back and we'll run through.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
I just want to thank Mr. Larry for his hard work putting this presentation together.
Yes, thank you very much. Not on the labor of love.
Item 6, discussion, 3-year-old kindergarten.
Yeah, we wanted to just, bring this to the board and just have a little discussion about it. Mr. Larrabee and I were just kind of talking about, what would it be like if we looked at starting a 3-year-old kindergarten? Now, we kind of talked to Casey and talked about what impact that would be on Tiger's Den. I did talk to, a lady who runs the, Heart of the North daycare. I did stop out at Iron River, today. But, there was a little, daycare is pretty worried that, if we start 3-year-old kindergarten, it might shut everything down. But I think we have a group of people that, that have need for somebody to look at their 3-year-olds, and a lot of kids we lose to Superior. So, Mr. Larrabee, do you wanna, just?
Yeah,
project a little bit?
I should have just stayed up. So, I mean, for the last couple of years, this has been a conversation around the state. It's not just a local conversation. 2 years ago, Dr. Crony and I started talking about what this would look like, and then last year we spent some time touring. We went to Superior, met with their director when they started their 3-year-old program. The last couple of years, we've seen daycare programs start in South Shore, Solon Springs, over in Washburn. So neighboring districts are all having this conversation as well. And it really goes back to meeting the needs of our community. I used the example when Mr. Martin and I talked earlier. If we have, say 90 kids coming into our kindergarten, well, those 90 kids aren't all being met in our daycare programs. So families have stressed that there's just not enough local daycare and there's not enough options. And obviously we want to be able to support our families. So the reason for looking into this is to see, can we get some of our kids who end up in the Superior School District or end up in other districts because of daycare shortages? Can we recruit some of those kids and keep them here? So that's really the background to it.
Yep, so our idea was to just bring it to the board, see if, have a little discussion on it. If the board wanted us, we could send out a survey to, our community and see if they feel there's a need for it or if there's a want for it. And then if there is, then we bring it back to the board with what we find out. So, what are your thoughts? That's, I guess, my question to you.
Would this be similar to like 4-year-old as far as the format?
So structure wise, after talking with, I think Dr. Cronin and I talked to 7 different districts around the state. There's some similarities, slight differences, mirroring off of what Superior offers. It's a kind of a option for families to choose to go X amount of days. It could be 2, could be 3, could be 5. And it would be a daily program of in the morning with a licensed teacher, and then lunch, recess, nap, and then in the afternoon more like the daycare, some playtime, things like that. So there would be instructional time for kids, which we could obviously focus on developmental milestones with kids, and then increase in playtime in the afternoon.
So they'd stay in that room or with that teacher?
Yeah, so location wise, this is not need to build anything. We have room at NES. If you're familiar with the building, the old 4K room, when we took away the stage and we added on the 4K room in the Tiger's Den, those classrooms moved. So the original 4K, anybody that was here when the locker rooms were still in existence, it's that particular old 4K room where Mrs. Green actually taught it. And we would just utilize that environment. Currently it's vacant.
Yep.
Yeah.
How does that work with,
Okay.
well, and I only say this because I've got 2 3-year-olds at home. And, so.
Set them up.
Yeah. There is, so how, I mean, do you have like potty training requirements? They have to be potty trained, and because you're dealing with that at a 3-year-old level. How do you deal with IEP type situations at a 3-year-old? How do you?
So from a developmental level, yes, we would very much be working with families on, if that particular kid still needed assisting, we have a bathroom in that classroom that we'd be using just like we do with 4-year-olds.
Is that a liability issue?
I mean, we deal with that all the way through the elementary school.
Oh, no, I get it.
Yeah. So some questions that are surrounded it is, transportation. We would not be looking at busing. This would be parent transportation to and from. Before school, after school would kind of be the wraparound care, if you will. That would be an option if families choose, just like with 4-year-old kindergarten. Within that environment, if there happen to be students that are receiving special ed services, which starts at age 3, those students would certainly have an option to be able to stay in that program or to add additional time if that's something that is to benefit. And obviously, Mrs. Nelson and I would work on that.
So like birth to 3 is gonna end up recommending IEP type stuff to a 3-year-old once they come into school?
They already do.
Well, I know that.
Yep, so typically, that's where Mrs. Nielsen's team gets involved, is at age 3. And some of those students are not able to be at daycares because of other needs. And they don't have the staff to deal with it, we would have those under our roof. So it would be a win for some of those families.
So now I want to ask a money question.
Yeah.
Are they counted as the same revenue? Not that I want to put a dollar amount on a child.
Not currently. So anybody that's watched the legislative mess down in Madison, 3-year-old kindergarten discussions have surrounded Madison for the last 4 or 5 years. As far as whether it would be something that would be funded kind of like 4K with a 60% ratio, I would speculate it's coming eventually because of the needs and the shortages in daycare settings. I think that it's going to be supported for that. It just isn't yet.
So right now, there's no compensation via state
Correct.
for 3-year-olds.
There is if they have a special needs, like an IEP, there is for that, but not if they're just a 3-year-old. Health Superior and the other districts work with that. They have a daily rate or a monthly rate. So X amount of dollars per day or for X amount of days for a month.
So we would essentially offer, just make sure I'm understanding, we would offer 3-year-old kindergarten for a price.
Yep.
That's what we're.
And the goal would be to not lowballing our daycares.
Right, no, I
We do
understand
try to keep the price right about where they are, just so it's being, it's equal across the board, but yeah, we would be charging for that.
Our ambition would not be to take kids away from those programs. I'm very grateful we have them in our community. The problem is we don't have enough. So we end up losing quite a few students that end up going to other districts because they don't have daycare. And I get those phone calls a lot with 4-year-olds off days of 4K, they can't find daycare. So they end up driving to Superior, Duluth, other school districts for daycare. And now that some of our neighboring districts have birth on up, we end up losing kids much earlier.
This is a quick question so we have talked about funding issues in the future and possibly staff retention issues. So does this pay for itself, or is this going to add to that problem?
Short answer, the goal would be for it to be self-sustaining. I can't, without having any kind of idea what the numbers might look like, it's tough for me to say if it is or isn't. I think like Mr. Moore talked about, this is kind of in the exploratory phase of things to see if there is an interest out there that might make it self-funded, if you want to look at it that way. I tend to agree with Mr. Larrabee. I do think eventually at one point in time, the state will allow us to count 3-year-olds. I can't guarantee that at all. I know it was a large conversation pre-COVID that has some, in my opinion, has some, wheels behind it, some backing behind it, and then COVID happened and that's kind of put on pause. What we do see, unfortunately, is yes, what Mr. Larrabee talked about, we have a number of students that are 3-year-olds, or thereabouts that, parents maybe financially take a year or two off, but eventually do have to go back to work. And unfortunately, those kids never walk through our doors because they're tagged in those programs. And that affects enrollment, which of course drives our revenue. So there's a lot of different factors that are part of this one, but we're one of the few in the general area that don't have it currently.
Right now, we're the only one in the middle of all districts that do. One quick note to that, speaking with another district that rolled us out a couple of years ago, they went from 1 program to 3 programs because they had the ability to do it. So, to get the right number, what the right mix is, that would be Cody's world, but other districts have made it sustainable.
So the overhead is going to be staffing. We have the space, so that's out of the equation, thankfully.
The space is 1 room though, right?
Correct.
So that's gonna be capped at.
Yep, so Casey and I have looked at the room together and kind of talked about rough numbers, and to work within that room, plus also the current Tigers Den. So.
Any questions? Further? As the president, I'll speak. Could there be some unintended consequences if the concerns of the daycare, if it leads to their demise and there is no, daycare people for the 1 and 2 year olds, then we don't have any.
Meaning, I guess,
If you have a 3-year-old, it leads to the demise of the existing daycare places.
I think that was probably one of the fears when 4-year-old kindergarten rolled out and when Tigers Den started in the district. And I would say per history, that hasn't happened. Like I said, numbers wise, if you look at the comparison or combination of the two elementaries, we run somewhere around 80 to 90 kids. Those 80 and 90 kids are not in those programs. We have 2 registered daycares within our school district, and they don't have 90 kids in their program.
One other issue about bringing their kids to a Superior daycare, people live in that end of the district. It's logistically, it's not convenient to come drive back, not in reverse, but drive back this way, and twice a day.
Correct. And that is, we've had that conversation all the way through the elementary level of, it's easier for their kids to be here because of employment purposes. We don't see a lot of interest in bringing kids the opposite direction. The conversation at this point for 3-year-old kindergarten is only for NES, but it would be district-wide. Because to have the same conversation going the other direction, I don't believe that we would have enough need to start. Could it potentially get there? Yes. And in past fashion, we've looked at Tigers Den daycare at Iron River as well, and we just have not had enough interest for it.
Thanks.
So I guess, yeah, go ahead.
So my understanding this year, and I'm not sure how this would change with Head Start in Brule, my understanding was that Head Start had to open up and no longer have their income guidelines because they were short enrollment this year.
And the Head Start people up there, please correct me if I'm wrong. So I work with them on the teaching side and recently had a meeting with their program director. They're allowed 20% of their population beyond their cap, if you will, but it is only 20%. So, if they have X amount, there's only 2 or 3 kids that potentially could be above that. And there's still some requirements in there. I'm not versed enough on it, but it's not just open to everybody.
So how would this be different than Head Start and Brule?
There wouldn't be a income gap on it.
Okay. Do we have any idea what the needs are in the community for 3-year-olds? My understanding is that most daycares have capacity for 3-year-olds. They don't have capacity for the younger siblings. And so to avoid multiple stops, they're bringing their kids to Superior, to Duluth, because they want a one-stop shop, because there isn't an opening for their 1-year-old and their 3-year-old. So how would this, what is the need, I guess, is my question.
That's what that would be the next step, is to send out a survey and survey our families and see is there a need for 3-year-old kindergarten. If this is something that is wanted or needed, and we look at, what the data says, and if it comes back strong, then we have another discussion. But if there isn't a need, then it's going to be kind of a moot point then. I guess that's all I look at.
Mm-hmm. One other question I have is, what are the rules in regards to a school 3K setting versus a daycare 3K setting?
We don't operate under the same guidelines. So there are some differences in there. In case if you want to speak to your world, it is slightly different under ours.
Like, what do you mean? Like
what are the teachers?
Technically,
I did
as a
just throw you
school,
one.
and technically as a school, they don't have to operate under any guidelines. There's not square footage, there's not any of that. So depending on, like, I know Superior tries to mirror what like a daycare facility would be, but they technically don't have to.
So like most common would be like the staff to student ratio.
Mhm.
That particular room, if you're familiar with it, is not a huge room. So we wouldn't be looking at 50 kids in there. We would still want to maintain a usable number within there. And even in our 4K classrooms, we try to keep that number 20 or less. Unfortunately, we've had to be above it a couple of years, but that's the way it goes.
I'm just asking, knowing I think daycare ratios for 3-year-olds are 1 to 12. how we can realistically say we're not going to compete with our daycares when we are going to be able to have 23-year-olds when they're required to only have 12.
The daycare ratio for a 3-year-old is 1 to 10.
So with that, I mean, I wouldn't want a teacher in there with, support 23-year-olds in there. So we would still look at a licensed teacher and a paraprofessional working with kids in a very similar ratio. And obviously we'd have to look at, well, what is price point doable? And obviously it has to be self-sustaining, which is, I'm sure Superior's gone through those growing pains. Jen Willoughby has been very helpful in questions that I've asked. She's been able to kind of help, here's what we did, here's how we approached it. And other districts I talked to, Greensburg last year, a lot in Milwaukee. Trying to learn about it.
So a lot of concerns, I guess, in regards to putting our daycares out of business and then having a greater problem with that infant toddler care by taking the 3-year-old to our a little more profitable from a ratio standpoint and leaving kind of the more intense, lesser ratio kids, quote unquote, left to the daycare.
The younger ones, and that is a growing concern in our community. I'm not really open to the whole bringing in a birth all the way through 4 daycare. If we look at neighboring districts, almost all of them have had that conversation and done it. That's a bigger conversation than this. The reason for looking at 3-year-olds is because we have parents that will stay home for a few years, but they eventually have to go back. And I'm interested to learn what our community says about that age, to see if we're losing kids at that age or if we're losing them younger. Good questions. Mr. Lambert?
Well, I think you answered it. I assume then the conversation has not happened about going birth through 4 years old. Casey doesn't have enough gray hair or any at this
I don't have enough left.
Next day that. Maybe I should have understood. Is Northwestern, are we a licensed daycare?
So we are observed by the state, so we follow licensing guidelines, but we don't have to, because we're a school district and we're they're not as tight, and we have exceptions to things because we're in a school district. Like our playground, for instance, if you go into a daycare, they have to have a certain amount of cushion underneath their wood chips, and then they have to have a certain amount. We don't have to do that because we're within a school district, or there's so many different things. So we follow the rule just as a guideline, but we really don't
Have to?
No.
So to go back to what you had said, a 10-to-1 ratio for 3-year-olds, we don't have to follow that.
No, but in my world, when it comes to a 4-year-old, it's a 1 to 12. So I maintain that because that's just for me, it's
I mean, one person watching 10 3-year-olds is gonna be
yes.
freaking insane. You'd be burned out about 2 in the afternoon, you're done.
Yes. So we follow them, but we're observed by the state.
Okay. All right.
Well,
So I guess my question is, would you like me to pursue this, to look and see if this is something our community needs? Or would you like me to, table this till next year and look at it next year?
Well, who was it was it you that spoke to both of the daycares?
Well, me and Brad were in the room when we talked to Heart of the North. The lady at Iron River wasn't there when I went, but she was supposed to come back. She wanted to go back.
I guess I'm just interested to know what was the
vibe?
Was it what are you doing?
No, well, they just, I'll be honest, they were concerned about it because they felt that it would hinder their, like Kat said, if we take away the 3-year population, they don't have enough people to cover the 1 and 2s, and then they're gonna take the 1 and 2-year-olds out of the area, they'll probably put the daycares out. She did talk about some of the people that do in-home daycare, that could put those out of business because we're taking those kids away. So it's, they understood where we were coming from, but she was really telling us what she felt was gonna affect their role. So we try to say that, hey, we're not trying to undermine what you're doing. We want to keep you going, but we want to make sure that there's not other people that can't go to daycares in the area, that we're giving them an option if that's what they need, if there's a need for it. If that makes sense.
It does.
I
I guess I have one question, if I can. This is probably directed to whoever the child development experts are in the room. Do we feel like there's been a lot of conversation about, oh, how can we make it easier for the parents, for the transportation of kids and everything? What about those 3-year-olds? What's in the best interest of those children? Okay? Can anybody answer that with regards to what is in the best interest of the kids?
Well, I speak from the education side of it. I mean, to have people that have 4-year degrees or beyond working with their kids, that is what I would want for my daughter, for my son. You know, to have the best and the brightest, which is what we want to enable. That's what I want for our kids. And if we can bring that under the roof and meet the needs of some of our kids that have more needs while doing that, then I think we're taking a step in the right direction.
Can you articulate why?
We have kids that are not allowed to go to our other daycares in the community because of their needs. And that pulls at my heartstring, because I want to be able to give those kids a better chance. And if we can work with kids when they're 3-year-olds to develop some of those skills, then they're going to perform better when they're in kindergarten and first grade, second grade.
The unfortunate truth that we deal with sometimes too is the school is the best environment that the kid will have. And that's just the reality for every school district. So that is part of the equation that we have. Brad alluded to it. It's a lot of development happens well before the student ever walks through our doors. Sometimes that's great, and sometimes families need to make those decisions that are best for them, but sometimes some of the students that walk through our doors, they don't have that option.
So Brad, with that, would the main teacher for a 3K classroom be somebody with a 4-year degree?
Yes, yep. So we would look at, obviously, you know, looking at coding and what we could afford, but we would want to have somebody with an early childhood degree and background, somebody that has worked in that. I don't think that we would have a hard time getting somebody interested in that. We'll look at the success we've had with 4K. I think we could do it. And obviously, 3-year-olds is its own developmental level. The focus would really be on those readiness skills, interaction skills, play skills. How do kids interact in the school setting? How do they interact with each other? All the things that we saw with our own kids when we raised them.
More like what kindergarten used to be.
Yeah.
There was a time.
Yep.
There's a time when kindergarten was just 2 days a week. Imagine that now.
Well, I guess we need to decide if we want to move forward. If we want to do it next year or want to table it.
Or like I said, if you want us to,
No.
yeah, what we're looking at is creating a survey, getting it out to the families and seeing what the community, if there's a need for it and a want for it. And then bring that information back to the board next month.
I don't think that can hurt anything, is to look at the information. You gotta get information at some point.
I think you're gonna get it in a month.
Okay, well, we
But whatever.
January, but I mean, we could,
We appreciate your option.
we shoot for the stars in this in the morning household, that's just the way it is, so. I only reached the 4th floor, but
So I think it's a good idea to get the information out, get a survey out and get it back whenever, I don't know what the timeline, or if there is a timeline, just so we have an idea if there's even interest in doing it, because if not, then we don't have to, worry about it.
Well, if we get it back by January too, it's fine too, but I mean, it gives them 8 weeks or whatever, so. Mull it over.
And if the ambition is then to bring it back and have further discussion, it gives enough time to make that discussion pointed and look at, if that's to happen next year, then we can bring more information and look at other schools and what they've done.
This wasn't necessarily noted as an action item, but maybe we can direct you as consensus to do that part with information.
Can we then also look at what the current capacity is in the daycares within the school district?
We can.
I with the 2 of them, I mean, it'd be harder with anybody that's doing in home.
Yeah,
but
I think
we
there's
have
a
to
list of
consider that,
licensed daycares.
You have to consider that.
Yeah.
So I think what she's suggesting is an impact study, right?
And my personal 2 bits would be to, I guess I'd be willing to look at the information, but I'm not sold on the whole thing. That's just my
Okay. I'm the same way, but I think by consensus, we can look at the information.
I would be willing to look at information.
Anybody object to that?
That's what I need to know. All right, thank you.
Thank you all very much. That's item 6 of.
One item 7. Sorry.
Okay, item 7 is approval. Items, number 1 is a request from Ms. Forsyth, DECA supervisor, overnight trip to Green Bay, Wisconsin, with 9 students who attended DECA Sports and Entertainment Marketing Conference on December 7th and 8th, 2023. Elaborate.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So I'm Jenny Forsyth. I'm the DECA advisor. And we have 2 of our officers, one former, one current. So we have Sandra Zinko, and we also have Brady Gross. And we are seeking permission to attend the Sports and Entertainment Marketing Conference. It's in Green Bay. We have attended it in the past. It's a really amazing learning opportunity. Industry professionals are there. We've had marketing rep for Brown County, which is the whole county that Green Bay. So they come and talk about like the impact of like one Packer game, what it has on the community, and all the different businesses that supports. We've had the marketing director for the Packers. We've had different sports reps for the local professional teams. Before, we've always seen the Phoenix, their professional basketball team. Now we have an opportunity to see their hockey team, which is interesting. We've never seen that at the Rush Center. And there was a huge renovation that we did a tour of in our previous tours there. So really fantastic. Lots of great content, specific things that I put in the letter if you'd like to look at it. I also have the packet that our gentlemen have, but I want to give an opportunity to our student reps.
Well, really, our DECA program has been super successful. I mean, we in Canada both went to state last year. And I think that a lot of our alumni are really interested in business and they like having those opportunities to go and like network or do other events like that. And this is actually, I mean, really interesting for a lot of our people because we have I think we have like a growing demand for DECA and business related things. And on the way, we'd actually stop at Eau Claire, which has a really good business program. And a lot of our alumni go there right now.
We have 2 former DECA presidents that are there.
Yeah.
From our chapter.
And then really when we're going down to this meet, that would probably be a nice place obviously to stop, lunch, whatever, and have a tour of the place so that people that are interested in those business degrees would be able to actually look around and see the college and tour it. And then when you're finally at the conference, we'll stay there for 2 nights. It'll be just a really good thing, I think, to look around and kind of explore what's out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the day that we would be spending there, we basically we'd register, and then from registration, we'd break up into 3 groups, and then we'll do things in different orders depending on what group we're in. But there's a tour of the field and the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame, so that'd be nice to do. And then there's presentations by like sports marketing directors of those different teams, so like the Packers marketing director or like somebody from the town of Green Bay will talk to us about like the impact of the Packers as well as how they market themselves and get their name out there to other places where they may not be pulling in money from. And then we like have lunch, and then there'd be like a closing ceremony thing, which is usually just about DECA and like what's going on in DECA. So I just think it's like it'd be really fun to go down there and learn about different jobs and careers that are both in the business side but are in sports and entertainment business, because those are something that a lot of students I think really like are interested in comparatively to say like food marketing. Like it's just something that would be fun to go down and learn about.
And we do have kids compete individually and as teams in sports marketing. That's a pretty popular category. So, and our first competition is coming up soon. We've got January. This is when we start. So.
but.
Do you allow Viking fans to go and and they wear their gear?
Yes, we have had Viking fans in the past, and my favorite part is at Lambeau, they try to get everybody to say, go Pack, go, and most of them will do some kind of school.
It was discrimination.
Yes.
No, I was there last year and I wore I wore a different jersey.
I'm guessing they won't have a lot of, Packer population there right now. Tough years.
For somebody who's lived in the Green Bay area for 20 years or 20 plus years, the city has changed so much just in the last 4 years because of all the huge hotels, 5-star hotels going up, the whole Titletown area, and it's all driven to host the NFL draft, which is coming in 2025. So this is going to be just a outstanding experience for you guys to do this. So I highly recommend approving this trip.
The WIA has also moved on to their tournaments.
Yep, we
To
have
Green Bay.
we have girls basketball, girls volleyball, and they've also looked to try to get hockey, but we can't with the gambler schedule. It's very tough to get. And again, in the UWGB men's team, it's tough to get enough days in there back to back. But it's great venues there. It's a really cool place to be. So.
Any other questions for these folks? Well, before I ask for a motion recommendation, make sure you check on Trent Meyer when you're down there. Okay, I'll entertain a motion for this approval of this.
Are all the pool parties going to be together or separate?
This is separate. This is separate.
I'll make a motion to approve the conference.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carried.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation.
Have a great night.
The next thing is a request for overnight trips from Brian Smith, Director of Athletic and Activities, for the boys varsity basketball. These will be taken together. Boys basketball, the holiday tournament of Cornish High School in lacrosse, December 27th, 28th. At the wrestling team on December 1st and 2nd, and December 8th and 9th, and December 27th and 28th. First one in West Salem, then in Wisconsin Dells, then River Falls. And a dance team for the regional dance competition at DC Everest High School, which is near Wausau. So, Mr. Smith.
The first two with the boys basketball is something they've done for a number of years, has gone to a tournament over the holiday season. We try to seek out some better competition to fill our non-conference schedule. So this is a good opportunity. I think past years we went to West Salem, but now they've moved on to Aquinas. They go down to the 27th, play the 27th, play in the 28th, to come back. Transport them down there, usually drive a van also, because then the bus can come back. Because a lot of parents go, kids ride back with their parents, have a van just in case, have a van to go between the hotel and the venue that they play at. And so it saves a little money and time in the hotel and the type of those things. The hotels, either parents help pay for, or their activity fundraising money pays for the hotels. The district pays for the transportation and the entry fee. Wrestling goes to a number of tournaments that they have in the past. These are the same ones they went to last year. They went to West Salem. They go to the Dells for a huge meet on the 8th and 9th of December. And then they've always gone with the varsity only. The first two are JV and varsity. And then the Northern Badger in December is just varsity only. They take a couple bands with them. The first two will need a bus because they will all fit in the vans. So we transport a bus for the first two. But these, again, there's opportunities for our wrestlers to get matches, get a lot of matches. Because there's some matches we have up here in the heart of the North where there's maybe 7 matches a night, 8 matches a night. We have a hard time getting people to come here. We have 1 home meet this year for our wrestling team, because nobody will come up here. There was a snafu with the heart of the North schedule. We had 2, we lost 1. So we need to go seek out some of this competition. There's a couple other events we go to that don't stay overnight there, long trips. Again, those Saturday events started, they're weighing in at 8:30, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. And if you're looking at a 3.5 hour trip, that's not very conducive to performing or very healthy for them to get up at 4 a.m. and try to compete all day and in a pretty tough sport. So I did note that our regional is in St. Croix Falls, which is probably doable. They'll start 9 or 10, but that might be one we won't stay overnight at. The sectional is in Tomahawk, which is a ways away, and that's an early start too. So that might be an overnighter, depending on how many kids advance to sectionals and regionals. Then the state, hopefully. Dance team this year is a longer
Before you
trip.
go up the wrestling, it wasn't clear, how many wrestlers would you anticipate, like, for these first meets?
The first two, we just started practice tonight, so I'm not 100% sure what our numbers are. We had in the mid-20s, 25, 26 signed up. Now whether they all show up tonight, I don't know yet. But those first two are JV and varsity opportunities. So all the kids are going to get the goal. All the kids are going to get a bunch of matches, probably up to 5 in a day. The one in the Northern Badger and River Falls is strictly varsity. And then a couple other ones. If you go to Rhinelander, we're leaving early in the morning for Rhinelander one morning. That's varsity, and I think the other one is varsity JV. So we have probably 5 or 6 multi-team events that they participate in. And then the dance team, their regional competition that they attend every year is over in DC Everett by Wausau, and it starts at 8 in the morning. So we're requesting that the dance team gets to leave on Friday. Since it's a regional type competition, the school has paid for the hotels for the regional competition and for the transportation.
What's the date on that?
It's January 26th and 27th. I believe the note says December.
26th is Friday.
Yeah.
26th is a Friday, they perform on the 27th, and come back that night. All these are, other than the Northern Badger, all these are one night.
I didn't remember, does that, the regional, if they advance to the state?
Yes.
Is that part of the request?
Not yet.
Okay.
Normally with some of the athletic teams, we have to come back, like if they advance in the state, we haven't had to come back and ask again.
I think if you make a mistake.
Yeah, it will, it didn't go.
But I think with lacrosse, I think they would drive down that morning. It starts a little later, I think. I think the last time we was lacrosse, we didn't leave early. We didn't leave the night before. But we start early in the morning, they gotta get ready and all that.
Any other questions for Mr. Smith at this time?
The girls' basketball team is not going to a holiday tournament this
That's what I
year.
was gonna ask.
They're playing just a couple extra single games on Saturdays and some smaller invitationals, like they're going to Somerset, they're going to, where's they going at? Maybe Prescott. They're just going to some one-day things.
Or a number of teams.
Playing a single game. Like the Somerset one, there's like 6 games that day.
They don't have 5
We play
matches
one.
like the wrestlers in one day?
No, they don't have 5 games that day.
Any other questions, Mr. Smith? Okay, if there are none, I'll entertain a motion then to approve these items.
I move that we approve these items.
Mr. Foley,
Second.
second, Mr. Roddick. Any further discussion? We wish them well, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Okay, item 7C is the 2017 Ford Transit cargo van.
Yeah, yeah.
Was it better, or who would it go?
I was just gonna read it, but you can.
I can give you a quick rundown on that. I think we've chatted about this. This is a holdover. We had a cargo van that did a lot of food service delivery for our buildings. That was a 2003 vintage with 186,000 miles on it. It served its life well. Paul, the previous business manager, attempted to try to replace that thing, and ultimately we found out we couldn't get a new vehicle. So dealership did find us a used one, and we'd like the board's official approval to make that finalized. because it has been a need. It was in the budget as a placeholder, as the email talked about. And that's where we're at with this.
I move to approve the purchase of the Ford Transit cargo van.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We can have further discussion. I would note that it's a good job finding a used vehicle because we don't put that many miles on and don't necessarily need a brand new vehicle.
That vehicle will probably last us another hopefully 10, 15 years.
Right.
He's got to the point where you can use collector's plates on that.
We can't drive them in January if you got collector.
That's right.
Trying to get our buses to there too, but I ain't working.
Is there any other discussion before we call the question? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 7B, district policy.
Okay. Most of the policy revisions recommended by Neola are minimal. Have been made to reflect changes in state law for clarification. New language is highlighted in yellow and deleted language contains the strike through. I'm gonna go with that. But however, there are only a few that have been more extensively rewritten. You may also know several of the policies have been submitted more than one time with different numbers. It is the legal opinion that we have a public or student policy, a professional policy for licensed staff, and a support staff policy. Friendly reminder, Neola has attorneys that reviewed the Wisconsin statutes and write revised policies as it pertains to state law. Neola also provides legal protection when using these policies and revisions. Further, Neola does not recommend the use of incorporation or district-specific materials. Those are included in handbooks. Neola will, at the request of the district, incorporate district-specific materials into the licensed material with the implicit understanding that the district bears all risks associated with the district's decision to request that such district-specific materials be incorporated. Neola also reserves the right to, but not obligated to, advise the district to seek its own legal review of the district stuff. So, with all that saying, we have on our all new policies need 2 readings. The first for the meeting and discussion questions can take place, and the second will follow up in the December meeting. But if you look at, when we go down the list, we are going to be rescinding these policies: 0164.1, regular meetings rescind; 0164.2, special meetings rescind; 0165.1, notice of meetings rescind. These policies are rescinded as content has been incorporated into the revised policies of 0161. 1623, 3123, 4123, sections 504/AODA, prohibition against disability discrimination in the employment. Please see the below consolidation of these policies in 8913. Are we still on track with that?
Yep.
Okay. So
We need to read all of these for the record.
You really don't need to because the agenda has been posted with all these numbers on it, plus.
No, it's fine. I'm just trying to be thorough and make sure I don't miss anything. So.
You get to read them all, Mike.
You would read me.
So.
Page 110.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So, yeah, but anyway, so we're rescinding some policies. We've got, the employment nursing mothers policy and then all the updated policies. We're looking at the first readings. So.
And they were in the agenda.
Absolutely.
They were in order of the agenda.
The public gets the same agenda you do.
Okay, and this is the first reading, so we have a second reading in December.
Yes.
An action item?
Only, excuse me, the ones that are updated get approved tonight, along with the rescind and the technical changes. The only ones that will come back to December is the first reading policies, the new policies.
Okay.
like
So-
Mr. Moore said.
So like I said, the recommendation is to approve the rescinded policies, update the policies and technical corrections. That's what we're looking to.
Yeah. Got it. So they're rescind 3 and combine them in a new 0164.
Correct.
And then, the other ones are incorporated. Yeah, okay. Is there any questions? Maybe make a motion first? Questions?
On the conflict of interest one, no board member should hold a position at the school district.
What page, can you cite the page, please?
The pages,
0144.3.
yes, that one.
Which one?
011.2. Conflict of interest.
Page, yeah, your second sheet of paper.
Yeah. But however, a board member may serve as a volunteer coach or supervisor, such and such. But didn't they just pass a law that you can be a bus driver now as a board member?
Yeah, but you don't get paid.
You don't, okay, that was my question.
Yeah. You're welcome to try.
So you still can volunteer.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was. No.
I already checked your number. So.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I just want to tell you, you can do anything. Go say it. Okay, got it. Take this grand line, just as a comment, and I made an inquiry this morning because I was curious about the selection of instructional materials and equipment. This is section 2521. My question is, and this is just where I'm not familiar, and I think was more curious. You don't need to check on it, I'll read it to you. It says, the district administrator shall develop administrative guidelines for the selection and maintenance of instructional materials and equipment. So I was just kind of curious.
What that is?
One of those guidelines.
So.
Let me finish up. The second part of it is the district administrator shall periodically provide for a systematic review by the board of the district's instructional materials and equipment. Now, and so those are two things that are like, what do you got? I didn't know the answer to that.
And Peggy we kind of visited a little bit on that. Peggy kind of highlighted some of that as we do periodic, we bring things periodically to the board for approval that have been updated or need to change, correct?
So the curriculum committee, anytime anything is changed or updated or revised or dropped, that goes to the curriculum committee who reviews that and makes recommendations to the full board. And then that goes to the full board. Typically, those meetings happen in December. So
that would be the process on how the district administrator makes those changes, because we do it by committee, and then if things need to come to the board, that's what we do. So if the board feels we need to revisit that.
I will tell you from a financial standpoint, getting to know curriculum better than what I would like. It's got about a 5-year shelf life. And then whether we love the curriculum or not, typically we're gonna be, in most areas, forced to update on some levels. So I think you had a question around timeline and when might that happen, I think. Some of that will be dictated to us by our providers.
And that's why, one of the things Cody and I and the admin team have talked about is developing a kind of a timeline on how, or like a capital budget timeline and how we, what curriculums need to be updated in so many years, so in 5 years, what curriculums are going to need to be licensed or we need to look at again. So developing that so we can budget fiscally, 5 years down the road or 4 years down the road, whatever, we can do that. So. Did I explain that?
Basically, yeah, it's a replacement schedule. So from my neck of the woods, it's nice to know that, okay, we're gonna need a new science curriculum, and roughly that's gonna be $150,000 investment. Those are numbers from my chair I'd really love to know, so I can kind of start laying out some game plans, not necessarily, year 1, year 2, but year 3, year 4, we might have to have that on the radar, so aren't sitting here and now I gotta try to borrow for a $200,000 curriculum because we didn't know about it. Those are the stepping stones we're trying to get in place, and will be a continued process with the administrative team on kind of taking stock as to where we are at with our curriculums across the district. There are large investments, both in time and resources, money.
So that's a first reading on that. So what we need to.
No, it's an update.
Oh, it's an update.
It's an old policy.
Okay.
So you've got a, you asked for a recommendation.
Okay. Yeah, so we need a motion to approve the rescission of some policies and some new policies and the updates and verbiage of existing policies.
So I'll make a motion to approve the rescinded policies, updated policies, and technical corrections.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And then we'll have the second reading on the new policies on the December board. Yes.
Excuse me, but you were gonna have a discussion on the district attendance boundary waiver as well.
Do I pass that up?
Yeah, it's kind of in the middle. And that was included in board documents.
Got it. So,
oh, there we go.
There it is, sorry. So discussion about, or the district, attendance boundary waiver. So we've looked at, you know, how our boundaries are, you know, if a student lives on the east side of, you know, is it Highway H, the Blue
River.
That they go to Iron River Elementary, and then, you know, if you live on the west side, you go to NES, or, you know. I think we have, we've allowed families to come, you know, request over. I think we've got 4 families that are court ordered.
The numbers are in the enhancement.
Yeah. That were court ordered to come to NES. We've allowed some students to come over whose parents teach on the west side of the district. And I think there's only 4 families at this time that are kind of coming over. Everybody else is standing on the other side. So we're looking at maybe just closing that boundary and making sure that, you know, afterwards, everybody's staying on the other side of the. But it's just a discussion that we're looking at. Am I missing something? That
Well, the board approved employees
to
have their children here where they were.
Yeah, and that's okay. So, but is that something we need to discuss about after, you know, moving in the future? Do we need to look at keeping this policy open, or do we need to look at closing?
The reason that we talked about it in the first place was because of the numbers at Iron River, correct?
Yes.
Trying to maintain them, make sure that they have, and not overload classes at NES so that their numbers expand. So, I think it's, you know, if we're trying to do those 2 things, I think they need to look at it and maintain.
Any other comments, thoughts?
I see both sides. I mean, I know things have changed, but back when I worked in the district, I was given a choice, being from Brule. My principal told me we could go to, at the time, kindergarten was at the middle school. You remember those days? Yeah. Iron River does a kindergarten class, and then middle school held the Iron River classes. So of course, I sent my son to Iron River. That was his home school, being in Brule, but I soon realized that it didn't work out as far as the busing and getting home. For when he was getting dropped off the bus from, at the time I was teaching in Lake Nevaeh, so it was nice to have that option. I mean, I know I was in a different position being an employee, but So I'm not sure where I read it, but it kind of broke it down number-wise as far as what, it doesn't seem like it's that many.
So we don't have a lot of kids right now, there's only like four.
Right.
Four families.
Yeah.
I think it's important to clarify too, that that would stay the same for those families.
Yeah, exactly.
So we don't have any confusion with the current families.
Yeah.
Right. I believe.
Right.
Grandfather.
Yeah, they'd be grandfathered in that, and the same thing with the teachers. That's not an issue, it's just, but it's something to think about, to discuss, and then if it's something that we want to bring for a vote on later, we can do that as well, but those are just looking for thoughts right now, discussion.
I just have a question. So the 5 bullet points and as far as criteria, is that any one of those 5? Or is it all 5 to be satisfied, or what's the expectation? All 5?
All 5, yeah.
So you have to meet all 5 of those criteria.
Correct.
The other thought process to bring this to the board now is to make sure if we need to table it and come back to it, but eventually we'll have to make a decision one way or another, because we will start fast forwarding into the 24-25 school year and potentially making plans and what that might look like for them already. So it's not one of those we want to kick too far down the road.
I guess I should clarify too, and then that following year, NES opened up, so that's where I thought, so I was able to bring it to work with me. I don't know, I see both sides of it, and things were different back then. But with the open enrollment now, we're saying no to parents within our district, bringing them to our home schools, we might open enroll to, South Shore, Drummond, Eagles. I see, this is things are different now, so, this would be a tough one for me.
I guess my 2 bits is, we just got done having a long discussion on 3-year-olds coming to school, and those kids, the younger, them leaving the district because you can get easier something somewhere else. You're gonna upset parents that are already in the district. You're not getting a lot that are coming across one way or the other. I mean, we had set a number of years ago guidelines into class sizes that we wouldn't allow an inter-district transfer. We wouldn't allow some of those things if they got over a certain level. I don't think it's a big enough issue to start
mandating.
Personally, but I'm not saying that it wouldn't get to that point, and you get some ebbs and flows, but at this point, it's not, so.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Adam, let's address it if it becomes an issue, but I don't know that for the 13 student total that it's really
an issue
worth having a battle over right now. If it becomes a bigger issue, we can address it.
I mean, and I understand wanting to staff and make
Yeah.
sure you've got a student population in Iron River, I get that.
And that's where my problem is that, how many years have we gone with halftime teachers over at Iron River, and we keep having a revolving door? And if we don't do something to keep that population up, we better be willing to put full-time teachers in there, even if there's 9 kids in the class.
Mr. Martin, can I speak to that?
Yeah.
So those of us that have been here longer than others, you may recall that when we had part-time people, we saw that decrease or that increase in requests across. When we went back to full-time people, when we had the ESSER funds to do such, we saw that number decrease. So by having full-time staff there, we've had parents choose to keep their kids in Iron River, which is why you see a relatively low number now, as opposed to those of us that were here like the 1920 school year. We saw a much smaller population and more kids requesting over parents making that request because they were part-time people. So we see greater yield when we have full-time staff there, that families choose to have their kids stay.
So I guess, and I'm not trying to upset the apple cart, but what I am trying to do is have just bring up some tough discussions that need to be talked about. So we can kind of, and I'm always gonna bring this stuff to you with the board because I'm never gonna make a decision on my own and say, hey, we're gonna do this, because that's not how we run business. But if we can have good conversation one way or the other and see what's messing up, but it's not a big, issue right now. We don't need to address it unless it's coming up. So,
I think,
So then I guess my two bits would be to table it till November 2024. You good? Because I don't think at this point we need to do anything.
I'm looking for tabling, is that, you want to table it for another year, or you want to table it for another month, I guess? It's an opinion.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
I'm reading this guideline, and I'm trying to make sure I fully appreciate its purpose. And it reads to me, or if I understand the intent of this conversation, that this guideline is more for our families, right? As almost a dissuasion, because I don't read this as like a guideline for the board, right? It's not like we're doing this so that the board has good criteria for making decisions. I read it so as the intent that this would be published and communicated to our community. Is that, so that's really what it is, right?
When someone calls and inquires about it, I email that policy to them, tell them the next board meeting, and we go through the criteria to, they have to come to the board meeting and talk to the board directly. So, and that's how that all gets communicated. And usually they contacted Mr. Larrabee. And you send them to me.
Don't talk to me, call Peggy.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when Mr. Lundberg was here, there was
Absolutely none.
absolutely no transferring
No,
from one to the
and
other.
that, when that policy got put into place, I don't know if you were at any of those board meetings, but they're really contentious. We had a lot of parents that had a difficult time with it because of their living situation or whatever.
But that was before open enrollment as well, right?
Well, there was open enrollment, but it wasn't as, I hate to say it, but it wasn't as open as it is now. Right. Yeah, I think we started open enrollment. I can't be sure.
So.
Did you make a motion or we?
No, I didn't. I guess I'm just saying a month I don't think is gonna make a difference. We're talking about a small percentage of students. We're talking about, you said 4 families that are court ordered or what have you. So I mean, that number becomes a little bit smaller. I think if you go into next year and we look at I think you need to have a decision sooner than later.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure at this point, having a decision today for next year is worth it because the population's not there. But maybe you gotta be in front of the cart,
So my only thing is I'd like to wait until we know what our staffing is gonna be next year before, I mean, I'd like to at least have that. If we're gonna decide to do another halftime over there, then I think we're gonna need to do something else. So we.
Yeah, that was, can we table it so we know what staffing situations look like for next?
And we should have that by March, April.
Peggy?
Respectfully, instead of tabling it, perhaps what Kat had talked about earlier, that get a consensus that the policy will remain the same until the administration feels the need to bring it back to the board. And that'll be whenever it is, whether it's in January or May or whatever, but because if you're sticking it to a month, that would make it a little more difficult.
Sure.
Okay, we direct our administrator to do that. That's okay with everybody. Okay, the next item, somewhere. You're funny, we don't know.
Administrative. The new ratings, I guess, it'll be.
What's that?
So administrative report.
Administrative report.
Yeah. All right. We had some communication received. Thank you for the memorial sent that were received from the families of Virginia Leith, former administrative assistant, and Jackie Chandler, former special education paraeducator. Thank you to the teachers, faculty, and staff for their hard work and dedication was received from CJ and Andrea Seward from Chicago, Illinois. A copy of your October 2023 WI Bulletin is enclosed in all the board packets, and a copy of the Superior Telegram article on Governor Evers' appointment of mine to the teacher retirement board was in there as well. So that's all we have.
Congratulations on that.
Thanks. It was kind of, I mean, out of 500 superintendents, he chose me, so I was very humbly honored with that. So very,
Yeah, that was great. Okay, inclement weather, Mr. Moore?
yeah, okay, so this is something, I just wanted to see what the board's feeling was on this. A lot of times we get bad weather and we close down school, but sometimes it might be just 4 to 5 inches of snow or icy roads, and I wanted to see what the feeling was on 2-hour delays. I know our school district typically in the past does not conduct 2-hour delays for inclement weather, but I'd like to consider this for a couple options or a couple reasons. I run 2-hour delays at my former schools. The reasons it's very rural. A lot of back roads that aren't plowed. We have a lot of buses that we're putting out on the roads, but we have we've got a lot of teachers that travel in far distances into the school. Plus, we've got a lot of kids driving cars. Now we had a couple, I think it was last week. We had, or 2 weeks ago, we had 6 inches of snow, 5 inches of snow. And you know what, I was a little thrown back by it because I wasn't ready for it just like that. And I talked to our transportation director. He said, we're gonna be fine. But then when I left for work, my road wasn't plowed and County F wasn't plowed. I wasn't ready for that. So it just took me a little bit. But then we had a couple of teachers in the ditch that day. So that, that worries me. I guess I want to know what your feeling is about the 2-hour delays because sometimes it just takes a couple hours to just get the plows out, get the roads cleared off, get a little salt off, so it's not as bad traveling. So I would like to go with this this year, but I also want your blessing on that if I can go that route.
We've always taken a lot of pride in being the toughest district in the area, haven't we? I mean, we go no matter what.
And I get that. I get that. You know what? I was
I'm
told
being
that.
facetious,
Something about northwest of Wisconsin where we're just being a fire than that. So it's tough, but I guess I look at one of these gentlemen or these two students were driving and they hit a patch of ice and all of a sudden they semi hit them. I couldn't live with myself or something like that. So just my 2 cents.
So how many parents have to take the time off of work? Would have to take time out. I mean, if you say we're gonna do a 2-hour delay, are they gonna take the day off? And if I'm gonna take the day off, I'm gonna want my kids with me. That's just my selfish parent perspective.
There could be some of that, yeah.
You're a good parent because I take the day off.
On the other side though, sometimes they take the whole day off. We take the whole day off because, the roads are too bad, where 2 hours later, they might, be cleared.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't know. I think
Didn't we talked about this with Dr. Crowley? And I don't know what, is it in the policy to do 2-hour late and go home early or something like that too?
No.
We talked about it though, did we not?
We did.
And we never did anything with it?
No, we just kept it the same because daycare issues, work issues for parents, and some parents can't stay home for inclement weather. And, at least not for a 2-hour late start. But it was pretty mixed. The board was mixed.
So there might be a time where we're closing down. There might be a time where we have to have early dismissal. There might be a time where we, would have a 2-hour delay because it's just, but I guess, I will go off your guidance and feelings, but
I mean, last year, a couple of days could have been a 2-hour delay.
Yeah.
And then we wouldn't have been in this situation. We had time, maybe.
Right, and I think.
I just don't know what's better for parents, really.
And then I think the number one thing we should focus on is the student safety, the kids that are driving too, I think would be, I mean, even though I know it would be hardship for parents, really ultimately, it's the safety of the kids that we're.
Well, I guess my other thing is if you end up doing a 2-hour delay at 6 o'clock in the morning or 5:30 in the morning, you say we're gonna start at 10 o'clock. But 9:30 rolls around and it hasn't stopped snowing because the wind shifted. But parents left, parents left to go to work because they're gonna get on the bus at 9:30 and instead of 7:30 as an example. Now, from a kid safety perspective, now they were gonna leave their kids home for a couple hours and now we're not. And I'm not talking high school kids or
No, but
middle school kids.
so here's how this usually works. In a situation where we're gonna go with a 2-hour delay, I make that call at 5 AM.
Okay.
We let everybody know that. And then we reevaluate it probably by 6:30 before 7 o'clock. If we're gonna go, hey, we're still on the 2-hour delay or it's not letting up, we're gonna just call it and shut it down.
Okay.
So they would know by 6:45 at the latest if we're gonna close the door for staying with our children.
Okay. Should we then also with this, should we also end up putting in there that we should be able to kick off early too?
Yes.
Because that's not in here.
No, and that was, I just, maybe that's my fault for assuming that, but assumption's the worst thing to do, but, I just assumed that you have done that in the past, but.
We have,
Well-
it's been years, but.
But that's something
I'm
that.
sorry, but are you looking for me for a comment on why we have not?
Didn't we do some early releases? I thought we had.
We haven't done early releases in many, many, many years. We used to years ago.
So that was, a 2-hour, an early release would go hand in hand with the 2-hour delay. Same kind of thing, we let parents know by, probably by 10:30, 11, if we were, 11 o'clock if we were gonna have early release, or it could be noon if it's gonna be like just 2, we're going home at 2, depending on the weather, so.
I guess I because we're rural and I mean, on a good day, I'm 40 minutes to work. On a bad day, as long as the bridge is open, what's that? I drive fast, so it's not really 40 minutes. A normal person should be 40 minutes, but on a crappy day, it's gonna take longer than that to get back. So, I guess I'm not opposed to it particularly one way or the other. I do think anytime you make a change, it's gonna be a bit of a snafu for the parents, but.
So what I guess my vision would be to get a letter out to the families and say, hey, this is what we're gonna be looking at this year for climate weather.
And I think timeframes as to when this is gonna be called.
Yeah.
Late 2-hour delay, and by this time, we're gonna say whether we're shutting her down for the day or we're gonna go. I think that's important to get rid of.
And I think, and I've been pretty consistent in the past with being on top of that. I'm usually the one that, I used to go driving myself to just check the roads and see how I felt they were, as well as the bus guys and then the county guys. So, but we'll, that's what I would do is make sure that everything in that communication to the families would be laid out for me, with time frames and that different scenarios. So.
Most of the districts around us do that, 2-hour delays.
Yeah, they do. Lots.
I think it's more common to do a 2-hour delay than to close early. I mean, it's more obvious. Because remember, if we close early, then that means practices are canceled.
Yep.
If we've done that in the past, we've closed all extracurricular activities or activities.
I've showed up here to practice after it's been closed.
There was one day last year where we didn't have an early dismissal and probably should have. That was a rough commute home for a lot of buses. I remember it was like a heavy lake effect day. That would have been a nice day to use that early dismissal word, but it's just.
We had the bus driver's appreciation day that a lot of buses were having trouble.
That was good. I remember.
Is this getting an action to?
No. Consensus to allow our district administrator to have a slower late start or leave early? Any objections?
So my comment is that it's nice to have options. And this would be options that are good for us to have in our toolbox, but it is not something that I would recommend we pulled up carefully, understanding, that there's some impact to it, and so I would use it sparingly, and make sure that we're thinking this through. So, but it's good to have an option.
Well stated, I agree with that.
I agree too. I mean, it's not like we pull this once every week or something like that. It's only when we know it's gonna be a little tricky on the road, so.
Let people know about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Item 8C, school board election notice and schedule.
School board election notice and schedule is included with all your packets. Mrs. Olson and Mr. Langler's 3-year terms are expiring at the end of 2024. The election will be held on Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. That's all we got.
Well, the final aid certification of tax levy for 23-24.
Yep, that's in your packet there, in terms of the local tax levy. It did increase due to changes in the revenue limit formula. The mill rate actually went down for the district. I projected at $7.43 for equalized value. It was $7.50 last year. So even though the levy number went up, that's basically divided by the equalized property value that we have in our district, which is north of $1.3 billion now. So that's up another $219 million and change from the previous year. So mill rates are continuing to go down for the district, but I cannot guarantee that property tax bills will go down because the State Department of Revenue might have said that your property that was worth X is now worth Y. And that's part of that equation.
So, different towns and villages where they reassess, I know Lakeside was once. I don't know everybody else did.
I've heard, yes. That's part of,
Lakeside was.
part of that. So the tax levy that was set back officially November 1st. All of those letters have gone out to the town clerks. I will note that as part of this new budget cycle, our state legislature did put additional funds, almost $600 million into the school levy tax credit. That's part of the tax bill that most people don't always look at, but I can't say for sure because we are not involved in that directly. That is directly to the municipalities. But a lot of districts, ours included, expect with that they'll see increases in dollar amounts for that, which essentially decreases the tax bill.
Awesome.
So,
And
that's what we have there. Any questions?
we can segue right into the maintenance update, Mr. Pepper.
Maintenance stuff's pretty straightforward. Mother Nature did give us a nice trial run for snow removal, which our custodians were super excited about, and it coincided with our NES Halloween parade, which was even better. We were happy to note that it was not 3 feet of snow, but it was a good 6 inches of snow that we got on the night of October 30th. So thankfully, the weather has been a lot nicer since then, and we haven't had to break out the shovel since. Other stuff is just general maintenance, heaters or boilers are running. We've got a couple of leaky valves, stuff that we typically see once we start using that stuff. But other than that, pretty straightforward on the maintenance report.
Thank you. And the 103rd State Education Convention, January 17th and 19th, 2024. Mr. Morris.
Yeah, the State Education Convention will be held in Milwaukee on January 17th to the 19th of 2024. Please let Peggy know whether or not you're to register no later than December 1st. Mrs. Olson is our WASB representative delegate with Mr. Glonick as an alternative. We can change the alternative at any time if CISA is requesting Mr. Glonick's time if he's attending. So there we go.
Is that leaving the 16th to be there for the 17th or leaving the morning of the 17th?
Correct.
Leaving the 16th.
Correct.
And coming home the 19th or coming home the 20th?
Coming home the 19th.
Yeah.
We usually leave about midday on the 16th.
But
Mid-morning.
for me to know sooner rather than later, right now, and I called the day after The rooms, I was only allowed to get 5 rooms. So if you're planning, and I would need to still go and wrestle a bear to try to get a couple more rooms, so.
I might go just to see it.
Yeah.
Thank you. And item 8G donations, Mr. Moore.
Yeah, we have a few donations this month. Kids in Nebagamon have donated $500 each to Northwestern High School and middle school and the elementary for school supply, the school supply closet, and to the district angel fund. Charlotte Rufai of Lake Nebagamon donated 2 large totes and 6 totes of art supplies for the art room at NES. Tula Sabe of Duluth, Minnesota donated 12 winter coats to NES, and $1,000 was donated to the 4K classes at NES from Plains Midstream Superior LLC. A new one that wasn't in your packet, $1,000 was donated to the choir for the trip to Chanhassen by Starry Eye family from the Seth Starry Eye Memorial Fund. And when is that right? Sorry, excuse me. And then Wendy Brown donated a nice pair of winter boots to an NMS. So we thank all of those people for their donations and very appreciative of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. The community is helping out the kids. I don't know that. The WASB correspondence and legislative report, Mrs. Wilson.
Not much to report. The Assembly Committee held a hearing on Parental Bill of Rights, a legal standard for the right of parents in their child's education. There's a total of 16 proposed rights and provisions listed on the WASB website. Not much to report until there is something to report on that. Also, the legislature took action last week on several bills that will impact K-12 education. Again, I'll report back once we know where those stand.
Thank you. CISA 12 report, Mr. Glenn.
Okay. Some statewide CISA updates, discussion among CISA administrators about respecting CISA boundaries when selling services. This is more of an issue downstate, some of the largest CISAs. All CISAs have been charged with some large projects this year because of Act 20 K through 3 literacy. There's a 9-member council established that will be working to review resources to make sure they meet science-based literacy guidelines, reviewing early reading readiness assessments and screenings. What interventions should be established to make sure all students make progress, and then making sure all teachers are trained in reading instruction by 2025. Big EMLSS project is being rolled out through CISAs. Sarah Nelson, Amanda Trott from CISA 12 are 2 of 5 people across the state leading the work. Every CISA has 2 coaches. Sarah and Amanda are working to train all of these coaches. And I have an in-person meeting tomorrow at Hotel Schwab.
Okay, thank you. Item 8J, we do have a written report from Northwestern High School principal, Northwestern Middle School principal, Northwestern Elementary and Iron River Schools principal, athletic director, district guidance counselor, and special ed director. And is there any questions on those? I tell you, I really appreciate those. You can see what you are doing, you see what the kids are doing, and that's it's kind of impressive. The little guy makes me tired just reading that.
Yeah, I just echo that too. I mean, obviously we appreciate the report, but more so what it reflects, which is all the good things that are going on. It's certainly obvious that there's a lot of activity in that building, so I appreciate that very much.
Any other questions? And then we have the report from our student board representatives, Ms. Wita and Mr. Rickard.
So I'm going to be talking a little bit tonight about the sports that are currently going on at high school. All of our fall sports have finished up. The girls cross country team qualified as the whole team for the state cross country tournament this year. It's the first time it's happened in quite a few years. And they placed 8th overall. And then we had a single individual qualifier from the boys team. Morgan Martin qualified for the state meet, and he placed 26th overall, which is really good. There's well over 100 runners in the meet, and that's really impressive. The football team made it to the 3rd round of playoffs, and they had a very good game, but they did lose to St. Croix Falls. And our winter sports have actually all gotten started. Girls basketball started last week, and they have their first game on Thursday this week against Grantsburg. And as we talked about, wrestling started practice tonight. Boys basketball also started practice. The first game is not going to be till after we get back from Thanksgiving, and it's going to be against Hayward. And our co-op sports that not a lot of people really kind of know about. We have any sport we don't have offered here. You can reach out, and Mr. Smith will help you find a way to play it with a different school. We have 2 co-ops over the winter. We have boys swimming. 2 of our high schoolers are swimming with the Superior team, and their first meet will be on November 21st. And we have several girls that are playing on the Superior hockey team as well with co-op sports. And yes, we have gymnastics, also a Superior. In past years, we've done hockey, boys hockey with Ashland, but I don't believe there's any members of that size here.
But we're still part of the co-op, even though
For one more year.
for one more year.
Really? They won't drop, they won't be up at next year.
They won't.
Because with us and Hurley and Ashland, that puts them in a Division 1.
Okay.
And we have 0 people
We have
right now.
none, and we don't have any coming to my knowledge, so.
Yeah.
It puts them in a division. I've reached out to Hayward, Spooner, Superior about possibly playing. Superior's not an option because they have too many players. Spooner and Hayward would be the same boat. We would probably drive them up to Division 1. We'd be playing Hudson and Superior, they'll clear schools in the tournament, and they don't. So it's, yeah. So our co-op with National probably, we won't drop it.
Some activities and clubs that are going on right now. FFA, as when they came in and had the roller field, they had that national convention in Indianapolis 2 weeks ago. I heard from Mr. Nahus and Maria and other people that it went really well and it was a lot of fun, great experience. Drama, they had their district competition in Drummond back in October, and they also had their sectional competition in Eau Claire, November 1st, both of which they did very well in, and they ended up qualifying for state, which will be this Friday. Or I think they travel down this Friday and then compete.
Is that in Madison?
Yep. And then also they're gonna perform in the Night of One Acts, which is tomorrow at 7 p.m. So come and watch that. That'll be really cool to see everything that they're doing. So the band and choir, they recently had their fall concert about like two and a half weeks ago, back in October. A couple of select band members participated in the all conference band, which was last Monday. Basically, if you don't know what that is, it's where I think around like 5 schools, I can't name them all, come bring their bands in, and then you get basically one day to learn a bunch of different pieces of music, and then you put on a performance at the end of the day. So really great opportunity for people to meet other band students just from surrounding schools and to make some good music. The KVJR parade, the Northwestern Tigers band will be performing in that, as they always do. And then upcoming stuff, the winter concert that in later December, and then the jazz concerts for both players. So keep an eye out for those. What was it? Last Women in Math Day. When was that last?
That was last Wednesday.
Last Wednesday, Miss Beard took a bunch of women in our school who are interested in math and STEM and stuff like that. They went to UWS and got to learn all kinds of different stuff about women in math and all kinds of great stuff. It was a great experience for them, and yeah. Obviously, you heard from DECA. They're going full swing, and they'll be traveling soon too. Another club kind of involved is Quiz Bowl. They've been having some one sometimes 2 competitions a week. We meet about like after school on an online like Zoom call, and you just compete against other schools doing that. So that's pretty much it. Most of the other clubs are just, having weekly meetings, pretty calm. Things for most of the clubs don't pick up until probably later December, early January. So excited to see where all those go. So.
Any questions?
I do believe there's a special bike on QGR this week on our band.
Yes.
Because they were the first ever band. They were the first ever band to be in the parade. They've been in all parades ever since the onset of it. So I think that's on tomorrow night.
Right?
I think so.
Right.
Is it Friday? No, the parade's Friday, but
Oh, gotcha.
I think that special. I'll ask Mr.
I think it's just on Northern. So.
Northern.
Yeah, Chelsea. So keep an eye open for that.
Sometimes you can go to the website and see it after the report.
The band's playing the players.
We'll see if the temperatures are a little bit nicer.
Should be nice.
Last year, I think it was 15 degrees. All of our instruments froze. Yeah. Weather's looking a little better, so.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 9 is comments from the audience. We have concluded the business part of the board, and we will end the live stream. The comments from the public agenda items, not the forum.